Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. It happens to be January 31st, 2024. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll start our Board of Commissioners meetings with citizen input. Ryan Rudnick, you are first on the list. Thank you for joining us, Ryan.
Yeah. Thank you, Patty. Thank you, Commissioner Chang, Adair, and DeBone for the opportunity to speak again here today. I was recently listening into your retreat, and I know there's a lot of issues that the county's facing, and this is one of many. But just want to make sure this issue doesn't get forgotten. I'm here to speak on the halfway house that the county has approved and cited within our densely populated neighborhood along Wilson Avenue in Bend. It's the west side of the Larkspur neighborhood. This is a neighborhood that has a lot of families and kids and parks, and it's disproportionately burdened by facilities like this compared to other regions of Bend. You've heard many neighborhood concerns regarding safety, and you'll hear many more today. There's a petition that's now reached 850 signatures and will likely continue opposed to this. There's hundreds of comments online that illustrate and demonstrate what the public's feeling is about this, your constituents' concerns. And in response to this, it's been unfortunate to see the county's response, which has generally been to downplay neighborhood concerns and then to publish an FAQ document that defends the county decision. And then no meaningful changes have been made to the operation or location of this halfway house. And what this does is it sends a couple messages to the community. It sends the message that the safety concerns of neighbors in this part of town don't really matter. It sends the message that grant terms, statements, and representations are not really binding. There are statements and representations made by Free on the Outside and the Community Justice Department, such as where they intend to site the facility and how quickly they plan to have it up and running. And those have not been met, and there haven't been any consequences for not complying with the grant terms and the representations they've made in that. So do you really want to send the message that you can get away with it and that grant agreements don't really matter? It also sends a message that county contractors and departments can tactfully misrepresent their program and public outreach to the Board of Commissioners, receive funding, and then get away with it, bait and switch. Do you want to send the message that that's okay? By not making changes to the program or enforcing grant requirements, these are the messages that are sent. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that there are that some actions should be taken, in my opinion, to not send those messages. I'd request that the board, again, as requested in the last meeting, would put this issue back on the agenda, as it remains to be an issue of great public concern, and to revisit this and take meaningful action to adjust the operations and or location of this halfway house. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for being the voice of your neighborhood and representing what the community is dealing with. So it is appreciated. Is anyone else? Brenda, no one else? Stephen, is anyone online? Okay, please. Would you welcome Ashley to unmute?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Ashley. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Ashley Schreiber. I'm here again on behalf of a large group of my neighbors in opposition to the transitional housing program for felons, including sex offenders at 640, 652 Wilson Avenue. Once again, we strongly believe this was a poor location choice. This neighborhood is filled with children. We are approximately half a mile from 3 schools and half a dozen parks. Over the last several weeks, I've provided you with countless examples of people begging you to reevaluate this operation. Our support has gained a lot of traction in the last 2 weeks. In this same BOCC meeting on December 13th, it was shared that the thought of having people convicted of certain crimes living nearby can be scary or awkward, followed by reasons why it could be a good idea. And closing that statement by saying this project should be celebrated. While you did identify the inevitable feelings those neighbors would have, you chose to overlook it pushing through what you already knew was going to be negatively received. In that same meeting, there is a moment where it is suggested information be collected on similar transitional housing programs in Bend and their impact, if any, on our community, possibly alleviating some of our concerns. Did anything ever come of that? We have asked many times ourselves to you if there are examples of similar programs nearby to compare this to. The reality is this is actually a very real negative effect on families and the adjacent properties and beyond. There are at least 12 children between the ages of 2 and 14 within 60 yards of 640, 652 Wilson, including kids directly next door. 6 of them, actually, who play in their backyard. Their lives at that home will never be the same if this program is allowed to continue as planned. We know now that many of those adjacent residents were never notified and had no idea the situation was even a possibility until they saw it on the news. Had Free on the Outside adequately done their outreach with decent forthcoming information, I can almost guarantee you that the parents of all 12 of those children would have had further questions, because as we have shown, they all still do. Free on the Outside claim only one person they spoke to had a question. That simply doesn't make any sense. Because we don't have anything tangible to compare this to, we are left feeling a little bit like a sick experiment. The neighbors do not feel like their voices are being heard, and their safety feels like it doesn't matter to you. Once again, I ask this project be walked back and reevaluated. It is without a doubt the situation poses unnecessary risk that can be completely avoided. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashley, for joining us today. I appreciate hearing from you.
I
Is
appreciate
there
you.
anyone else, Stephen? Okay. Do we have the timer on? Okay. Okay. But you're seeing it? Okay. All right. Thank you. So, Brooke? Ashley, your hand is still up?
I don't know if this is working. Oh, is it working? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can, Brooke. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm in the car. I'm sorry. I just stepped away from work. Okay. I'm just gonna read my notes. I'll start now. Good morning. My name is Brooke, and today I'm speaking about the 640/652 Wilson Transitional Housing Project. I live very close to this triplex. I actually live less than 100 feet away from this project that's being started. I just wanted to bring awareness that I was never notified about any info regarding this new change to our neighborhood. I was never left a note, a flyer. I never got a knock on my door as stated on 11/27/23 at 12:15, like it's in the field notes. I found out while I was scrolling on Facebook. Well, I want to add, I live alone, and I wasn't working at the time, so I was always home. And that's how I know. I was home. I never got a knock on the door or a flyer or talked to about anything. I found out while I was scrolling on Facebook about this project on an article from Central Oregon Daily Post. It was an article that caught my attention when I saw that the Wilson Avenue Safe Transitional Housing Project was being started and being talked about. When I was reading it, I immediately texted all of my family and my neighbors to make sure that they have heard this too. My neighbors said that this was the first time that they've heard of it as well, a couple days ago from Facebook as well. I think the choice for location was made very poorly, as many locations less than a mile away that children and women frequently visit. Kiwanis Park is very close to our neighborhood. It's exactly 0.2 mile walk away from my house. I live 80 feet away from the triplex, so it's a little bit closer to that triplex. A lot of children activities during the summer happen at that park, so that's very alerting. And I do understand that they need a place to subside when they get out of wherever they're coming out of. And I think it's very important that they do have a second chance to get on their feet. With that being said, I was looking on Mike Cross's Facebook. He is the guy that is supposed to be running this transitional house. He made a post on January 17th for a fundraiser for Free on the Outside, and it quotes that they have had several deaths recently from drug-related issues and mental health issues, and which is a very, very, very soft way of suicide and overdose. Which is the only reason why I'm bringing this up, is because for these safe houses, they're supposed to be severely watched by people that are a part of the Free on the Outside program. And it's just concerning that this project is being granted for a second chance at life, but the same issues that are happening on the streets are happening in these homes. So my concern is, why put a house in a neighborhood that has so many kids and women, and to preach about second chance at life for drug and whatever issues that they had, but it's still happening. I just feel like it's a waste of money, of everything, and just putting all the neighbors at alert. And my stress level with this whole project has gone through the roof, considering about moving, which is really unfortunate. But yeah, I just think this whole location is just a really bad idea. And there's just some things to just keep in mind with what's happening. I feel like it's very rushed, and I just ask everyone that's involved in this decision to just reread through everything and really think about, if this was you, how would you react, and how would you feel if it was your children, if it was your family, if it was your wife, if it was your sister, just to see a different perspective, our perspective as the neighbors. And that's all.
Thank you so much, Brooke, for taking the time and testifying today. Appreciate
you.
it.
Yeah.
All right. Stephen, is anyone else with a raised hand? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Let's go to our consent agenda.
Move approval of consent agenda today.
Second.
Any further discussion? Commissioner DeBonne,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So now we will go to item number 5, the emergency operations plan with Nathan Garrity, who has been identified as the #1 emergency preparedness person in the state. I know, what a title, right?
Yeah, I'm not, depends on who you ask, I suppose, but
Well,
this is the group that matters. So
well, that's what I've heard.
I appreciate that, Commissioner. Well, good morning, commissioners and staff. Nathan Garrity, emergency manager with the sheriff's office. I brought my teammate, Ashley Volts, who's the emergency services coordinator, and Ashley actually did the lion's share of the update on our emergency operations plan. So she's my crutch today. So appreciate having her in attendance. Yeah, you should have received a copy of the updated EOP base plan in your agenda packet. This is something that we need to do on a periodic basis. We are a little behind due to some issues.
3 years behind.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. Just with some issues that surrounded the pandemic and staffing issues and administrative challenges, we're bringing forth the latest version to you for approval and promulgation. Really, I do want to highlight that we did separate out the base plan for your promulgation versus the appendices and the annexes. And there's conversation with county staff that, one, if you include all those documents, that's a very large document for your review. And then we've split that out so that we can update those incident annexes and emergency support functions on a more regular basis that makes sense and will improve our ability to kind of add operational changes as they occur. without kind of getting into that update cycle that we need to legally do for the promulgation process of the base plan. So the base plan includes really the authorities and the processes and the structures for how the county looks at emergencies and disasters and how we overall handle and manage those. Some of the highlight changes this update is, standard cleanup. Every time you look at a document, you're going to find something. I'm sure we'll go home and look at this today and we'll find something we wish we'd have changed. But some of the language changed from Oregon Office of Emergency Management to Oregon Department of Emergency Management. Mentioned some additional local plans that we've gathered, including some language around whole community planning. Some changes to we've kind of converted access and functional needs, and this is kind of throughout the plan as well as all the annexes, to be more inclusive of like just general equity considerations around kind of what historically we've kind of had a really narrow view on that. Updated the base plan promulgation and kind of process, and I think that's referenced kind of a more highlighted schedule in there. And then updated some language around firefighting on unprotected lands to kind of line up with the process we brought before the board a couple of years ago on that resolution. So I think those were kind of the highlight items. Did I miss anything, Ashley?
Nope.
Okay. And be happy to answer any questions if you have any. And
Questions?
Just a couple thoughts. I know that, basically wildfire events is an emergency that we experience here. So, this isn't a plan that just gets put on the shelf and maybe used once in a while, because it's almost an annual event to really put an incident command system together, have a wildfire event. And we don't want to see more of those, but we do exercise this type of activity in one form, once in a while. One question is, could you explain Fire Defense Board? It's referenced in here a little bit. I know our fire districts and our leadership, but I don't have a feel for what that term means.
yeah, sure. So the Fire Defense Board is that's a function of the Oregon Fire Service mobilization process, where each county has a fire defense board, and it's essentially made up of all the fire chiefs within the county, and then they develop a process to appoint a fire defense board chief and alternate fire defense board chiefs in the event that there's a major mobilization. And so we work really closely with the fire defense board chief. It's been Chief Roger Johnson for a number of years here in Deschutes County. And so when there's a conflagration request or a fire on unprotected lands, that fire defense board chief is kind of our conduit to work with the Oregon, now it's the Department of State Fire Marshal's office to mobilize resources.
So yeah, it's getting organized and then requesting resources.
Correct. Yeah.
At kind of a structure.
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, I didn't have a feel for that. And then it all boils down to interoperability. One of the concepts of, and I'm involved with the interoperability board at the state level. When we have, daily operations and we're responding to events, when the events get big real fast, that's where you really need to understand who's your neighbor, who's your friends. How do you communicate with the next jurisdiction over if it really gets bad really fast? So interoperability is always a goal also. One specific item on, I guess it's 14 XVI base plan. It talks about ESF 16 law enforcement, and it's, primary agency sheriff, which is good. But and then it says supporting agencies, district attorney, community justice, sheriff's office, emergency management. But that's right in that concept of, wouldn't wouldn't other jurisdictions be in that discussion, I guess is my question, same kind of interoperability concept.
Yeah, no, thanks, Commissioner. That's a great question. So the way the plan is laid out is it identifies kind of key offices or departments within the county that take that lead role, and then other county departments or agencies that would then play a supporting role. At the state plan, there's a state agency. So at the state level, that would be Oregon State Police and I think Oregon Department of Justice are the two agencies pointed out in the state emergency operations plan. And then each jurisdiction. So how that mutual aid would work would be just a straight one-to-one relationship of a mutual aid agreement between sheriff's office to sheriff's office, for example. So and the Oregon State Sheriff's Association is doing quite a bit of work around developing kind of more streamlined mutual aid processes around supporting law enforcement agencies around the state. Learned a lot during the 2020 Labor Day fires in Western Oregon.
Yeah, ran across
South
multiple
and
jurisdictions real
Yeah.
fast.
And so a number of counties provided material and personnel support for pretty significant periods of time. And then the state has a law called ORCA, which is it's the legislature a number of years ago put into place. Essentially, every government agency is automatically opted into the mutual aid program, and you would have to opt out, which I'm not aware of anybody that has. So, which is actually really nice because that kind of cleans up some of that mutual aid processes when you're trying to apply for FEMA support, because FEMA is going to want to say, well, hey, where's your mutual aid agreement? And if we already have a state law that says we do it, that kind of helps with that.
So for any activity, other jurisdictions are part of mutual aid. So I was just looking at this, and it says primary is sheriff's office and then support agencies. And I was just thinking that, other jurisdictions are going to be in there real quick, if it really gets going, whatever the event is.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for pointing that out. And I think in Central Oregon, we enjoy, I would say, an above average relationship, not only law enforcement, but fire service, public works, most of health departments, all of our agencies really seem to, it's been coined the Central Oregon way. We seem to get along well and support one another. And so we're pretty fortunate here in Central Oregon to that effect.
Great.
So I have a question. I know that someone's in the room that remember the August 11th, 2018 fire in Sisters. A couple houses burned down, and the calls only went out to a certain limit. When that happens again, is the limit going to be wider than what it was that day? I believe it was pretty small box around that community.
So, great question. And, alert and warning is, as always a challenge. We have a number of tools available at our disposal for alert and warning. One of those is the opt-in process through Everbridge, as well as, depending on the circumstance, WIA. We try not to over alert people. In that particular case, I remember that incident. I think that particular case, the line was drawn down a road, and one side of the road got it, one side of the road didn't.
I think that's what happened.
And I think sometimes that's kind of the nature of the beast, and hastily, I shouldn't say hastily because that sounds, but in rapidly evolving incidents where you have to come up with a plan and quickly get the word out. I think in that particular situation, people residing on one side of the road certainly would want to know what was going on, but they weren't necessarily in immediate peril or threat from that fire. And so that was kind of, so we've worked on developing better tools as far as like our emergency management, our emergency dashboard, where you can see maps, you can see where shelter locations are, you can see the evacuation zones live as they get updated to help support that public information need for people that probably need to know what's going on, but they're not necessarily in the immediate area that's getting evacuated right now. So, it's always a work in progress. There's a number of, there's a number of tools that we can use, and it's always a matter of trying to use the right tool at the right time. But yeah, that was a very, and
it was on the anniversary of the Millie fire too.
Yeah.
So it was,
Yep.
It was one of those days. I just remember driving out.
Yeah, that was one of those days where the hair on the back of your neck is up because it was incredibly hot and dry. It was a windy day, and all it took was that start. Yeah.
Exactly. I know we visited, I think, Tollgate and Sundance in 19, but what about Deschutes River Woods? How is the safety there coming along, Nathan, in your opinion? I know we have signs there, evacuation routes and things, but is there anything special that your department's been doing to help those neighbors?
Lots of times, as it relates to evacuation, we try to have a consistent message countywide. But we do work with a number of neighborhood associations upon their request to help kind of guide them to a little bit more nuanced issues pertaining specific to their neighborhood. It's been a bit since we've had conversations with Deschutes River Woods. Deschutes River Woods, each year we do ensure that the emergency gate off of Frank Pennick Lane is operable. Usually that's kind of a spring event to make sure that, it'll open and that, it's passable. And again, that gate is really for a specific use case when either other means are blocked or, in the event where we have to utilize that gate, because it involves a number of partners between the railroad and Oregon Department of Transportation to effectively implement an evacuation out of that emergency exit. So aside from a really significant event where that's operationally necessary, really Baker Road is going to be the predominant evacuation route, with probably Brookswood as a secondary. But again, that's dependent on what's going on within the city, because Brookswood then goes, becomes a city street. And so, we are through the process of starting to utilize some evacuation management software, starting to look at different areas and how we can better implement evacuations there. But again, a county of our size and
Growing population.
yeah, population and then makeup. You mentioned Sundance and Tollgate. They're very specific neighborhoods. They have their particular challenges, and then other neighborhoods have different challenges. And so, it takes a lot of time and staff time and really communicating with those neighbors. What I would say is the most important takeaway that we usually walk away from with people is leave early. If you're going to, when an evacuation notice goes out, leave early. That's probably the best. But before that, before fire season, doing your work around your home and working with your neighbors to really increase the resilience of your neighborhood and to be more fire adapted, really builds on the advantages and the work that is done outside neighborhoods, like in the national forest lands, and to take advantage of the fuels treatments and prescribed fire programs. So, those working together kind of build that Swiss cheese model of protection, and then evacuation as a last resort. But, effectively leaving early, being efficient and deliberate about your evacuation strategies and knowing what they mean. And that's where we try to communicate that consistently across the county.
And it's a good idea not to drive around with an empty tank of gas.
Absolutely. That's a great point.
My neighbor lost his house and his dog in a fire because he ran out of gas. I mean, it's just that little question. Who is the alternate after Roger Johnson in case he's not in town?
They have a whole process, I believe, and don't quote me on this because it could have changed without my knowledge lately. I believe it's Chief Riley.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And will it be, who will it be after Roger Johnson retires?
I don't know. Yeah.
That'll be their election, right?
Yeah. Maybe the next fire chiefs board, I'll get that info and I'll share it with you.
Great.
Fire chiefs meeting.
That little bit of discussion was actually a good transition to what I wanted to ask about, which was preparedness plans. So this is an operations plan. This is what we do during an emergency. But I know we have preparedness plans of various kinds in the community. And I was hoping you could describe some of those. The one I'm most familiar with, or the ones I'm most familiar with, are community wildfire protection plans that help us do defensible space and to some extent help us plan egresses and things like that. But what are the other, looking upstream, what are the other preparedness plans in our community that help us be in the best place possible when emergencies occur?
Yeah, absolutely. And I might ask Ashley in a moment to kind of highlight a couple that she's been working on. But the community wildfire protection plans are pretty integral. We have 7 of them in the county. And then we also have the National Hazard Mitigation Plan that gets updated on a 5-year cycle, which kind of lays out what our natural hazards are. And then continuity of operations planning, so that how the county and departments and offices within the county can maintain operations during disaster. And then we're also working through it's an integrated planning. I'll have Ashley talk about it, but basically it takes a capability assessment that we do annually with the state and FEMA, and then ties that to training and exercise and how we can better kind of position ourselves for future. So I don't know if you want to highlight what I missed on that.
Yeah,
So.
I'd be happy to. So to just piggyback on the integrated preparedness plan, basically looking at each fiscal year, talking to neighbors and partners throughout the county and up to the state also about what are our needs, where do we possibly have a gap in our current capability, how can we expand on that, how can we bring training to the region, and working again with folks like health services and even our patrol sheriff's office, and just deciding what do we need, what do we want to bring here, and how can we close those gaps. We have a number of other plans that we keep up to date. Also, a natural hazards mitigation plan is another one that really delves into what are the things that could go wrong here in the county? How are we mitigating those hazards? Do we have specific areas in the county where we can make a project happen to lessen impacts of those natural disasters? So that is also one that is a part of our suite. And then as far as community preparedness, we actually have the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office Family Emergency Preparedness Handbook, which is a mouthful, but that's available on our Sheriff's Office website. And that's really for family members to take and sit around the dinner table with and go through maybe a page a week or something like that, and really delve into doing a home hazard hunt, finding things around the home that can maybe be mitigated. We do live in earthquake country, so things like strapping your water heater to the studs, and really delving into some of those, again, those hazards that we have here in the county and how at-home folks around the dinner table can prepare for those. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley.
My other question was about the annexes. So you talked about this being a base plan revision, and the annexes being potentially updated more frequently. So I guess my question is, in this round of revision, are the annexes being updated, or were they updated more recently than 6 or 7 years ago?
Yeah, they were updated, and every copy of the plan will receive. So each of the commissioners, you should have a copy in your office. We'll come through and we'll get you the updated, not only the base plan, but the annexes. And those annexes, probably more future updates, will be really more operational. That department or office that's kind of that lead agency would do more of the kind of, updating, and then we would help convene that. But yeah, you'll get updated copies of everything that's been updated in the not so distant future.
Thank you. I did just want to say one thing about that, about access egress out of Deschutes River Woods. I just wanted to mention that, sitting on the MPO board, I've been tracking the Baker Knott interchange planning, the major planning for that overpass, that intersection. And I know that I believe that your office was engaged in that process to some extent. So I know that the egress concerns out of Deschutes River Woods, not just out there, but kind of holistically for that area, were a really significant consideration in that process.
Thank you for mentioning that too.
Yeah, and Chair,
Yes.
if I just may offer, I just coordinating with Chris Doty, our road department director. The transportation system plan also addresses evacuation routes, and that could be a topic to discuss with the transportation system plan update and deliberations. Actually, it's just in a couple of weeks when we talk about that. So a very, very important topic, and thanks for addressing that.
Nathan, how many people live in Deschutes River Woods? Is it 6,000 or something?
Yeah,
5, 6?
I probably defer to Nick, but yeah, 5-ish, I think.
5, somewhere in there. That's what I was thinking. So it's when you have a problem and you have that many people that either are trying to get in, to get out, it just causes major traffic issues. And so it's really has to be incredibly well thought out. So thank you for being those people. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of resolution number 2024-005, adopting the 2024 Deschutes County Emergency Operations Plan.
And I'll second it.
Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner DeBonne,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah,
Thank you for your great work.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much for your work on
Big
this.
project.
Have a great day. Good to see you all.
Nice to see you too. Welcome, Dan and
you.
Eric.
Morning, Commissioners. The next two items are more financial housekeeping than anything right now. This first one is move approval of resolution number 2024-003, increasing or adjusting appropriations within the 2023-2024 budget. Basically, we had two grants, the OLWF grant and I believe there's a USDA grant that were kept in a custodial account kind of outside of the budget. And for accounting purposes, after we reviewed it, given that they are directly addressed to the county, they need to be put kind of within a fund and within revenue and expenditure line items. So that's what we're doing here. Because we're moving in the revenue and the expenditure, the adjustment changes the budgeted requirements and natural resources by more than 10%. And so we are here for that.
And I see that I need to open a public hearing.
Because it changes it more.
Right. It's more than 10%.
Mhm.
Eric, did you want to say anything?
Good morning. I'm Eric Kropp, Deputy County Administrator. I'm here as my relatively new role as Grant Administrator for Oregon Living with Fire. With the real retirement of Joe Stutler, I'm taking over that role for now.
Great. Thank you so much. So let me open the public hearing then in consideration of this resolution. Is there anyone to testify in the room? On Zoom? Any raised hands? So therefore, may I close the public hearing? Okay, let's close the public hearing and any discussion?
I'll just acknowledge that, so I'm the representative for the Oregon Living with Fire group from Deschutes County. Also, the other counties involved, Jefferson County, Crook County, and Klamath County. A lot of, this is that bridge between kind of our local efforts, Project Wildfire and the next level with multiple agencies, including the federal and the state, just to look at the big picture about fuel reduction and resiliency. So I'm supportive.
Okay, Mr. Chang?
My question was about just that. So I administratively understand what's going on here and why we need to do it, but this is a multi-jurisdictional, large regional effort, and I just wanted to double check whether the initial structure in this custodial account was important to the other counties in any way, to kind of maintain the independence of this body, or to ensure that it wasn't, showing favoritism towards Deschutes County, as they were, because a lot of these other counties are all contributing funds into this program as well. So I just want to make sure that in terms of the relationships among all the jurisdictions who participate in with Oregon Living with Fire, that this is not any kind of an issue.
Yeah. To my understanding, this is not an issue. It is more of a federal compliance where we had a couple of our accountants look over this, and it was determined that this has to be within the budget. And so this shouldn't affect, we had in a custodial account because we hadn't quite classified it as a grant, more as just a pass through. But we do need to put it into more of this formalized structure within the GL and budget. I don't know if you want to say anything more than that, Robert,
that the funds will be kept separately, and the expenses are kept separately. Project codes, so we'll be able to account for the funds separately within the account.
There's actually more structure now to account for the separation of funds, and that's one of the reasons we're doing this, for grant tracking compliance purposes too.
Okay, so this use of the custodial account, this was our choice. It wasn't something that was done at the request of the other jurisdictions. Okay.
No, that is correct. One last comment, Robert Tintle, Chief Financial Officer. The other impetus behind this is GASB came out with a new standard related to fiduciary funds. So we were required to review all of our fiduciary funds and reclassify them appropriately. So this is a cleanup of the GASB related to that. So if we have a vested interest or revenue or expenditures with any of these funds, then it needs to be recorded on the county's books, not just in the fiduciary fund.
And I'm only asking because, I've helped to build a lot of partnerships. I've observed a lot of partnerships, and the administrative structure around partnerships is really important to ensuring that any kind of, concerns that partners have about collective action are addressed. So, thank you for unpacking that.
Any other further discussion? Is there a motion?
With that, I'll move approval of resolution number 2024-003, increasing or adjusting appropriations within the 23-24 Deschutes County budget.
Second.
Any further discussion? Commissioner DeBonne,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So Dan, you said you're on the agenda for the next one too?
Yes, I am. So this is resolution 2024-004, increasing appropriations within the 2023-2024 Deschutes County budget. So the county refinanced the jail series 2013 full faith and credit bonds in November of 23. The proceeds of that were just under $6 million and were received with the series 2023 issuance, and they will be used to pay off the series 2013 jail bond in March. And so we're just, again, doing financial housekeeping and recognizing that those funds have been kept in escrow for 3 months and will be used to pay off the bond in March there. Are there any more questions related to that?
Okay, I should open the public hearing, should I?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yes, I should do that.
Another 10% here, yes.
Okay, yes, it's over 10%. Is there anyone in the room that's going to testify on this issue? Stephen, do we have anyone online with a raised hand? No one's online. Okay. Well, then let's go ahead and close the public hearing. And are there any comments or questions from the dais?
I mean, kind of looking a little bit more broadly than what specifically is before us today. I'm curious what the financial impact of this refinancing is. Is how beneficial is it for us to do this? It was.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Good morning, Commissioner.
Still morning.
Yes.
It's afternoon somewhere.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. Again, in relation to your question, just the benefit of us putting these funds in escrow, holding it for 90 days, and then paying off the actual bond because of where the interest rates actually are at market and where the bond rate that we received. We were able to earn $62,000 in interest over that 9-month. However, because we earned interest above our bond rate, we did have to, there's arbitrage, which means you have to pay back that amount to the government. So, and that was $28,000. So the net was $34,000. So $34,000 of interest by having this escrow for 90 days, excuse me. Now, by refunding the bond, we were able to save in debt service payments by over $404,000 over the remaining 15 years of the bond.
Right.
So that's about savings of $27,000 per year in debt service payments that we'll be saving. And that's split between the general fund and the sheriff's office. So every little bit helps. And so it was worth the effort to refinance this at that time.
$27,000 is going to be in our pocket and not theirs. So that's great.
And I'd just make a note for the public record, on the detailed attachment with the GL strings, it says that the funds are being transferred into Fund 550, I believe, 556. They're actually going to be transferred into Fund 530. They all roll up to our debt service funds. So there's no major difference there, but we just wanted to correct that Scrivener's error for the record.
So that was 400,000 of debt service savings plus 34K of interest.
That's included in that. That's part of the savings calculation already.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion?
I'll move approval of resolution number 2024-004, increasing appropriations within the 2023-24 Deschutes County budget.
And I will second it.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner DeBonne,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, commissioners.
Okay. We are now on item number 8. Tariq, thank you for joining us. Oh, did you bring us our 3D?
I did. Well, I presentation. I thought you had very much voice.
We
No,
thank you. Oh, this is better.
yeah, like show at least the existing and proposed there, yes.
Oh, my speech.
The imaginary surface. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a couple of you guys would like to.
Okay. Well.
Preliminary statement.
My third public hearing in a row.
I was gonna say this is probably a landscape record for how many we've had.
Yes, I know. I kept going, public hearing, public
Pretty
hearing.
short time too, yeah. So I'm just gonna. Here, I just wanted to maybe start with sort of preliminary information. So for the record, my name's Tarek Rawlings. I'm a senior transportation planner with the Community Development Department and the Road Department as well. Before you today is a public hearing, and we're going to get started here. Just one second. I just have to get promoted to a panelist here, and then we'll go through the script. So we could probably begin with just the hearing opening process, if you'd like to.
Yes.
With your portion, Chair Adair.
I would love to. This is the time and place set for a hearing regarding file number 247-23-000252-TA. The hearing concerns a request for a text amendment to DCC 18.80.030 to update the descriptions and dimensions of the Redmond Municipal Airport's imaginary surfaces and noise contour boundaries as outlined in the 2018 Redmond Airport Master Plan update, including changes to the map location of the airport's imaginary surfaces. Staff will outline the hearing procedures that will be followed.
Thank you very much, Chair Adair. And I'm going to share my screen really quick here to give preliminary information and a staff report. See everything there. Perfect. All right. Thank you, Chair Adair. For the record, again, my name is Tarek Rawlings. I'm a senior transportation planner with the Deschutes County Community Development Department and the Road Department. Today, the Board of County Commissioners will take testimony and receive written evidence concerning the proposed text amendment aligning the county's code DCC 18.80.030 with the 2018 Redmond Airport Master Plan update. Today's hearing will proceed as follows. First, staff will explain the hearing format and how to testify at today's hearing, followed by a brief presentation on the application. Then the testimony portion of the hearing will begin. And I will note that the board has established time limits for testimony. Typically, the applicant will present first and will be given 30 minutes. The agencies and any government bodies who are present and want to give testimony will be allowed 10 minutes each. Next, any members of the general public present will be given 3 minutes. And then afterwards, the applicant will then be afforded an opportunity to present rebuttal testimony and will be given 10 minutes for that rebuttal. Lastly, staff can make any closing comments if requested. As a reminder, the record materials may be viewed at the project website shown on the screen here. This is a hybrid public hearing with both in-person and remote participation. Before starting your testimony, please provide your first and last name as well as your mailing address. For our in-person participants, if you wish to testify, please fill out a blue sign-up sheet and submit it to the board secretary, Brenda, to the left of the dais. Chair Adair will call up in-person participants for their testimony. After your name is called, please come up to one of the tables at the front of the room before beginning your testimony. For our remote participants, if you want to testify, you must be logged into Zoom or have called in using the Zoom dial-in option. When Chair Adair asks if anyone would like to testify, you will need to use the raise hand feature to notify the board. To do this, you need to press the raise hand button on your computer or smart device, or if you called in, dial *9. When it is your turn to provide testimony, you will be promoted from an attendee to a panelist. You may experience a brief pause as your status changes. Once you have joined as a panelist, you will be able to turn on your camera if you'd like to. In addition to oral testimony, if anyone has written testimony to submit, please hand it to me directly. If you're in person, please submit your written testimony to me after your testimony. If you're participating remotely, you can submit your written testimony via email to me at tarek.rawlings@deschutes.org, shown on the screen here. The chair and staff are responsible for conducting an orderly hearing, and any testimony or behavior which is inappropriate will be addressed and may result in that member of the public being removed from the hearing. I'm going to stop sharing my screen briefly. Chair Adair, I will now return to the script and note that the commissioners must disclose any ex parte contacts, prior hearing observations, biases, or conflicts of interest.
Does any commissioner have anything to disclose? And if so, please state the nature of same and whether you can proceed.
I have nothing to disclose and I can proceed.
For disclosures, I am on the Redmond Airport Advisory Committee as an elected official, and I fly in and out of there maybe once or twice a year, but those are just disclosures. I have no conflicts to disclose.
And I have nothing to disclose, and I believe I can proceed. Does any party wish to challenge any commissioner, member of the hearings body based on ex parte contacts, biases, or conflicts? Any raised hands, Stephen? No, okay. As no challenges are presented prior to opening the hearing, does anyone have any procedural objections to the public hearing? Seeing none, the hearing is now open. Staff will proceed with a brief staff report.
Thank you very much, Chair Adair. I'm going to share my screen again here. Into the staff report portion of this presentation. So once again, today is a proposal for a text amendment. It's file number 247-23-000-252-TA. And this relates to the Redmond Municipal Airport. So the location of this airport is shown on the screen here in red outline. The airport itself and the properties that these imaginary surfaces stem from are owned and operated by the city of Redmond, and the zoning districts that affect those properties are from the city of Redmond's zoning. This was a 3D diagram requested on Monday, kind of showing what these airport imaginary surfaces are generally. So in the very middle, in a very small black shape, is a runway. And so stemming from a runway and these primary surfaces are these what are commonly called imaginary surfaces and more technically called Part 77 FAA surfaces. These are, for lack of a better term, they are notification surfaces for any type of obstructions or obstacles that are commonly seen in those areas for basically the navigation of aircraft. They are defined by different sort of maneuvering characteristics for aircraft. So things like a horizontal surface, transitional surface, approach surfaces are named after some of these aircraft maneuvers. So this is the existing airport safety combining zone that the county currently has imposed over a significant portion of land surrounding the Redmond Airport. Again, this is sort of the Oregon Department of Aviation's definition of what imaginary surfaces are to them. But right now, what we have here are these imaginary surfaces that are above ground that go over the top of several, many private properties in Deschutes County. And what this proposal would effectively do is change some of the descriptions of those surfaces that stem from the property or the runway itself and alter the layout basically of those imaginary surfaces and therefore the airport safety combining zone. This is a very comprehensive and sort of busy view here. And this should be, I think, the first page of the packet of large 11x17s that we see there that shows the slight, but it's a really large area difference that stems from this proposed text amendment. So you can see that some of the surfaces, the approach surfaces stem a little further to the south, potentially. There's to the southwest, potentially. A lot of this is shown just collectively on the screen here. So I was going to go through these parsed out in these other views. So this one here is showing just the runway or the runway protection zone changes. So on the left is currently what we have for our AES combining zone. On the right would be the proposed changes.
Tarek, a question about this one. So that those additional little pieces in the lower portion of these images, that is, are those connected to the planned second parallel runway?
They are, my understanding is yes, while there's not, and this might be a question more for the applicant and their technical knowledge, but my understanding is that this phase of the FAA funded Redmond Airport update does not include directly putting that parallel runway in, but it is being planned for at a future phase by including it in these materials. And so I think that those trapezoid shaped, the approach surfaces that stem from them, that is part of this adjustment. Now, the runway itself might be in a future phase though.
Right, those two couple of lower little pieces in the lower part of this image, it sure seems like those are connected to a run, something that doesn't exist yet.
Certainly. If we're okay with the runway info, I was going to just move through. These are one other type of imaginary surface called an impact area that's broken into a direct impact and a secondary impact area. So you can see the slight changes that are made there. It's more of kind of an oblong shape.
So just to make sure I'm clear, so this shows kind of the segment of it, but that's the area at Deschutes County's land use, correct? Because
this is only going to pertain to Deschutes County. So on the right side of that blue line is Crook County, and the applicant will be coordinating with Crook County for their requirements.
and the city of Redmond would be the rest of it.
And City of Redmond for anything else.
The 3 jurisdictions are involved in this same process.
Correct. That's a good job.
Yep.
And Jefferson County wasn't that far away on your
No,
last map. I was like, oh my gosh,
Correct.
they're right there.
And then coming through, just the final image here is the noise contour boundary. You can see that there, and we did a bit more closer analysis of really the boundary and the effects here, but the noise contour boundary would actually extend in some aspects, but also get a little more narrow in some others. So the really stemming from some of the questions on Monday, it was kind of what are the effect of this airport or of this noise contour boundary with the airport? And really what I can say is that currently the image on the left is what we currently have for our boundary. That boundary affects exclusively just City of Redmond properties kind of in the southwest side, or just public lands along the county jurisdiction side. They're across federal, state, county, and city public lands, but it's all public lands that are seemingly undeveloped to the south of that property. And really it looked like with this proposed adjustment, some of those would have less noise contour boundary affecting their property. It extends a little bit east, but again, that's also public land. That's the kind of the site of the court.
So it also has 55 and 65. What's the DNL?
Sure, that stands for day-night noise level.
Day-night noise, yeah,
So a
okay.
55 decibel rating is considered something that's too loud for residential living. Quality of life might be affected by the noises there. 65 is very loud and it's just signifying something even closer to the epicenter of where that noise stems from.
And 65 wasn't mapped previously. It just wasn't in the previous version.
Not specifically to my knowledge. No, this is part of the update as well. And so with kind of the visual part of it now, just into the actual text amendment, again, this would be an amendment to DCC 18.80.030, which is the airport safety combining zone. So then there'd be the effects of the amendments would align all of those previously just discussed imaginary surfaces and dimensions with the 2018 Redmond Airport Master Plan update. It would update basically those general descriptions, the dimensions, some of the elevation of the primary runways, things like that, which affects the locations of these surfaces essentially. We went over the names of those various surfaces, and it also updates those noise contour boundaries like we just went over. So, and as we just talked about, you've looked at the mapping portion that would change. So there is a zoning boundary map amendment that would come as part of this legislative text amendment, but it's prompted by the change in that description of the surfaces and the dimensions themselves. And you are effectively holding a copy of those pages 17 through 25 of the burden of proof that has those figures 1 through 4 from the applicant. So public process so far, we've had one agency comment from Deschutes County Building that was very generic and neutral. One from the Oregon Department of Aviation specifically supporting this proposal. One public comment in response to the general notice, which was from Central Oregon Irrigation District, which was also general, just accounting for some of their infrastructure that's in and around that property. And then there was one public comment received during the initial public hearing that was in opposition generally to the whole proposal. Then there was basically like process before the board hearing today is that we've had a hearings officer public hearing on November 7th. And then eventually there was a decision, a recommendation for approval issued by that hearings officer on December 15th. There was a notice of public hearing for this public hearing sent out on December 30th. And because this is a quasi judicial process that involves some EFU lands to the south, resource lands, then the board does have issue a final action on this proposal. And again, all the record materials are published at the project specific website. And really there's, so one piece is that we would need to engage in a continued public hearing on February 21st. One is to make sure there's ample notice being sent out to the respondents and any of the agencies that might want to provide comment, but that also we're working with, this is a pretty unique proposal in terms of some of the exhibits that are required for an ordinance, assuming approval of this. And we're really working through right now some of the legal descriptions. Some of those are pretty heavy lifts for something that size, these new adjusted boundaries. So this gives us and the applicant a good amount of time to work through some of those details that are proven to be pretty complicated.
The legal description of an imaginary thing.
And it's not on the ground, so we have to somehow describe that too. So following that continued public hearing on the 21st, there may be an open record period if the board chooses to impose such a period. And then following any sort of open record period and the 21st continued public hearing, the board will eventually hold deliberations on this proposal and then ultimately render a final decision on the proposal, either approving it as drafted, approving it as amended per any amendments the board might have in mind, or denying the proposal. And then ultimately I'll send a notice to DLCD reflecting that final decision. And yeah, I'm available for any questions you might have, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen at this time. I think if the applicant is not in the room right now, they might be attending remotely. So I might just ask if there's
there are people raising their hands.
Oh, perfect.
There's a
They're
few
here.
folks from the city of Redmond here.
It does look like we have Matt Rogers as an attendee might want to be elevated to a panel. Awesome. Thank you. And that's all for me. I would just turn it over to the applicant now if they'd like to take a moment or
Great. Thank you.
Any of them in person, so I'm trying to
The introductions.
Yeah, we've talked a lot. And
Thank you, Tarek.
now.
Oh, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having us. I think this thing is on, right?
It should be.
Okay, perfect. Zach Bass, Redmond Airport Director. With me is Tom Headley from Century West. Also on the line is Matt with Century West too. I think it was pretty well covered. Again, we had a 2018 master plan that's required by the FAA, federal regulations, and state. As part of that, we did, as mentioned, saw some changes in our Part 77 surfaces. We just recently implemented this into the City of Redmond code in the last few months. And now, of course, we're here to ensure that we're making air traffic as safe as possible, throughout the region and for the airport. So I guess I'll open it up for questions if there are any, or I mean, we can always talk about the airport, but I will ask any questions that you guys might have that we can hopefully answer. And I apologize, I'm a little sick, so if I get into a coughing fit, sorry.
I have a cough drop in my purse.
I actually, maybe I'll put one in.
Well, so is the process complete with the city of Redmond?
I believe we just implemented it. Actually, John, yeah, we are implemented.
So I guess from my point of view, that means there's been a static request for quite a while now, and this is really just working through the process in our jurisdiction. Same concept that I came up with earlier.
Correct.
Is there a driver, as in, did the FAA say we need to have safety zones a little longer, or, what's the starting point for this whole thing?
Yeah, our understanding, when we redid the master plan, we changed a few things for the future growth of a runway expansion. We used to actually have it
Referring to
separated
length?
to the length.
Length of runway?
So in the future, we plan on expanding the runway by about 3,000 feet. In our prior master plan, it was actually 1,500 feet on both sides of runway 523. As we went through the master plan, we found that it was much easier and better to do all 3,000 feet on the west side of 5.
Okay.
And so because of that small change, now you're seeing a small change, of course, in the Part 77 surfaces.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the driver for this whole.
Correct.
Great.
most of my questions were answered by these diagrams. So I think I guess I'm following the existing and proposed for most of the other diagrams, but this last one, the noise, the shape changed quite a bit, and it looked like in the earlier that it was accounting for a future runway, and in this one, I'm not sure if it's still doing that. So I mean, could you explain what's going on there?
So the future third runway will not have a DNL with it yet.
Okay.
But what you see the change between the past master plan and the current master plan really is we look at all the aircraft sizes, and truthfully, aircraft are actually getting larger, but they're getting quieter. Now, sometimes when you have larger aircraft, you can kind of see that extension off of 2-3 to the east. It's longer. It's because the aircraft are larger. Now, if you're going the other opposite way, it's not as much. But basically, the fleets have a big impact on the DNL that they run during the master plan.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question, Zach. I know that we extended the runway, or that's what I was told a while ago, because of the possibility of Cascadia. Did that happen?
No, it did not.
Oh, it did not happen? That was just a myth I had out there.
We are prepping for Cascadia just through normal infrastructure builds, but there's no money available to add infrastructure. That runway expansion we plan on doing directly after our terminal expansion that should start construction later this summer. That'll be another big project.
Right.
Top of this one.
A really big project.
It'll, yeah. So to give you an idea, at the end of 5, as we expand 3,000 feet, the end of that runway is 40 feet, has to go up 40 feet. So that's a lot of fill. You also have the parallel taxiway. It's going to be a huge project. We're going to start working on environmental in the next few years per our FAA capital improvement plan. That's the first step.
Okay. So if we did have Cascadia tomorrow, our runway could be the best in the state, right? Or the functioning one in the state, if we're so fortunate. Is there somebody that can't fly into Redmond at this time?
The reason why we're okay, so that's a 2-part question.
Thank you.
The runway, it's a good question. We've had FEMA come in, we've had the military come in and identify what can land, how many they can actually place on our hard stands or at the ramp. So we've got some studies on what we can do. But the biggest thing is over the last 10 years, we've redone both runways, increased their strengths, 2 taxiways, more ramp space. So we're doing that because we need to anyway, but it also helps us in the situation of a Cascadia. To your question on can any aircraft land? Yes, almost, except they can't be, it's more based on the weight.
Okay. So weight factor then.
So right now, the reason why we're expanding the runway is because in the future, we can't fully load a 737-900 and fly it to New York. The airplane could do it, but because of the weight of the fuel and the passengers, it would be too much, especially during the summer at our elevation. So, for example, we've had a Hawaiian talk to us about starting something at the airport. But once they look at our runway, they can't do it because it doesn't make sense. They'd have to cut passengers out of the aircraft to have the weight correct to take off.
I've been on a flight, though, where they've asked people to get off because of the weight.
Yeah, and those are usually like, let's say, Phoenix, somewhere high, either high elevation or hot. And then they start to calculate that differential between weight, of course, and runway length.
Okay, so it's really weight then.
It is weight. I mean, there's some things, right? We're not going to land,
okay,
huge jets, but
well,
we've had Air Force One land. We've had, some really large aircraft, but again, it's that weight balance that makes it possible.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad you were here this morning.
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
Oh,
cough drops helped.
I was living on them in October.
Yeah, 2 months ago.
Let's see. Are there any other questions for this group of experts at this time? Okay. Do we have any agencies in the room that want to address this issue? Stephen, do we have any raised hands? No? Okay. Do you want to do any kind of a rebuttal today? No?
No, but we'd love to come and give you an update on the terminal expansion sooner than later for this group. So
right.
Let us know if there's time.
No, that would be excellent to know because it's going to be an amazing expansion, though we do love Roberts Field the way, it's so convenient and handy for our community.
We'll keep the same feel. Pat.
Yes, the same feel. I know it's.
I like it.
It's really nice. And I was actually talking about Avello yesterday to to our visitors bureau. They are flying to so many locations. If we could actually have them here going more places, if that's a possibility.
You spend a lot of time trying to do just that. So
I know. I was
Right.
shocked.
direct Dallas flights start May 6th.
Mhm.
Nice 737 main line daily, at least seasonally for about 6-7 months. And so make sure you're flying because that's how we get them to stay.
Right. We can only hope, right? Okay, I know we have to extend this hearing,
Continue it until.
continue it.
Yeah, that'd be our recommendation, just so we could kind of get good notice out there, and then also just kind of nail down these legal description things we're working with the applicant on.
Okay,
Yeah, that would be our recommended motion would be to continue the.
okay, to continue the hearing then, that would be the correct terminology.
Both the oral and written record or just
Would-
the,
Correct, yeah.
Mhm.
So in the interim, 2 or 3 weeks, if anything comes in, we'll incorporate that into record. I'll provide you with an update on the 21st. So correct, if it's continued, we can still receive new written, just written materials, just because there's not actually an oral component to that until the 21st. But if anyone comes in with new materials on the 21st, we'll also incorporate those into record.
I'm just wondering, has Crook County gone through this process yet?
I'm not aware of whether they have.
We have not yet.
Okay, so Redmond, us, and then Crook County.
Next step, yep.
Okay, it's all a plan. Okay, is there a motion then?
I don't think there's any other action to take.
Okay.
In the hearing.
Okay, so
just to be clear, we're closing the oral record and holding the written record open.
no, he said to keep both.
Okay.
That would account for having another oral component on that 21st and allowing for written in the interim time.
It's the first line and it does say to please hold the oral and written record open and continue the hearing. And it is to February 21st of 2024. So that's what we will do. Thank you. And we will get you back then for the update of the airport. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thanks for joining us. And thank you for these giant pictures. They were almost 3D, Tari. Almost 3D.
The 3D diagram was helpful.
Okay, we are at item number 9, the Miller Pit. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Audrey Stewart, Associate Planner with Community Development. The item before you today is a consideration of whether to adopt the hearings officer decision for a recent plan amendment and zone change request. This is file numbers 247-23000-547 PA and 548 CC. The owner applied to change the comprehensive plan designation from surface mine to rural residential exception area. And they've applied for a concurrent change in the zoning from surface mining to multiple use agricultural. The subject property is 65 acres in size and it's located just south of Bend on Knott Road. This property was mined from the late 1940s up until the 1990s. Surface mining is regulated by the Department of Geology and Mineral Industries, or DOGAMI. And I received comments from them saying that they had no concerns with this application and that this property has been fully reclaimed. The applicant submitted a geotechnical reconnaissance report, which shows that the remaining aggregate resource doesn't meet the state's definition of a significant mineral resource, and this is based on the quality and quantity of remaining materials. A public hearing was held before a hearings officer on November 13th, and 2 members of the public attended. In total, we received comments from 5 members of the public, which were generally in opposition. A hearings officer decision was mailed out on January 10th, approving this application. Pursuant to DCC 2228-030, the board shall adopt the hearings officer's findings unless either an appeal is filed or the board initiates their own review. The 12-day appeal period has closed out and this wasn't appealed. As outlined in my memo, staff recommends the board adopt the hearings officer findings. Staff and the hearings officer agree that the proposal complies with applicable criteria in our county code, our Deschutes County comprehensive plan policies, and in state law. There's a suggested motion in your agenda packet, and should the board vote to adopt the hearings officer findings, I'll return next week for the first reading of an adopting ordinance. And with that, I'm available for any questions from the board.
Thank you. Okay.
I have a few questions. Where exactly is the urban growth boundary in relation to this property? Is it basically right across the street?
Yes. Correct. So this property it doesn't have an assigned address. It's located across Knott Road from Caldera High School. So those properties immediately to the north on the other side of Knott Road are within the urban growth boundary. And then if you also go west of the subject property, the urban growth boundary is separated by just a few residential lots.
Okay. And I'm assuming that means that there is city infrastructure right up to Knott Road there as well.
I believe so.
Can't have Caldera High School without. Yeah. Right. Okay.
The school that cost, what was it, $130 some million with the interchange? Yes.
So I have a sense when we talk about urban growth boundary expansions, I have a sense of how the state has a hierarchy. They say, well, we would rather you apply to bring in RR10 versus EFU. Where does surface mining fit in that hierarchy as a zoned area? I mean, will the state say, surface mining areas, no, you can't bring that into the urban growth boundary, or is that a prioritized or preferred place?
That's a great question. So I'm not sure where exactly in the ranking it is. State law tells us that the first thing you have to consider is rural residential exception areas.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be like our MUA 10 zone and our RR10 zone. When a city does the analysis to expand their urban growth boundary, they have to show that the property they're proposing to bring in essentially suits the needs that they're trying to meet with it. So it also would be more of a lift with showing that a property that is a surface mine is going to be used to meet like your housing needs or your commercial land needs.
Yeah.
Well,
in some ways, it's kind of like I mean, we see we see a lot of encouragement and efforts to redevelop brownfields, industrial brownfields, and in some ways, a reclaimed mine is kind of like a brownfield, but it's helpful to have that background. Thank you. I have water concerns, and there are a couple of ways to kind of address or raise those concerns. There are provisions around public services and facilities sufficiency that were mentioned in the application, and there was a mention of Avion as a potential water supplier for this. If this was built out as a rural subdivision. One of the things I would like to know is whether Avion is saying that they can serve this area based on existing groundwater rights and permits, or whether it would require additional rights and permits for them to be able to supply this area, because as we're hearing from the state, there's going to be some substantial new scrutiny of new groundwater permits moving forward.
And that's an excellent question. And part of it is that this time we don't know, it's under private ownership. We don't know if and when they would come in for a subdivision under our county zoning, or if they would essentially hold the land until if and when they're brought into the urban growth boundary and try and develop that way. If they came in for a subdivision under our county zoning, as part of that, they would have to submit a will serve letter. Right now, the zoning of the property, multiple use, what they're proposing, multiple use agricultural, would allow for one dwelling per lot, potentially also an ADU, but so it'd be pretty limited impacts. Where we would see, more water impacts is if they subdivide in the future or if they developed under urban zoning.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that is a correct assumption. I mean, we would want to look into this, but 6 rural residences, each with a 15,000 gallon per day exempt well permit, and an allotment of up to a half acre of irrigated landscape. That's a lot of water. And when you look at water per household water usage in municipalities, especially as we're getting more multifamily housing, more cottages with much smaller landscaped areas, the comparison between, per household water use is comparisons are really striking. So I would want us to really take a careful look at some numbers before we assume that rural residential development would have lesser groundwater utilization. That's all of my questions.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Will, was there something you wanted to add? No, you're just.
For the record, Will Groves, your planning manager. Audrey's doing amazing.
Yes, that's what I was.
There you go.
Excellent. I was thinking the same thing. So thank you so much for being with us this morning and having this as your project. Commissioner DeBonne, did you have anything you wanted to talk about?
The approval seems well reasoned. I'm inclined to support as it is. So, as I say, I'm kind of listening to Commissioner Chang. I'm trying to understand. Are you interested in taking this somewhere, or?
I'm trying to understand whether the hearings officer did due diligence on key considerations such as groundwater utilization. And my questions about the urban growth boundary expansion, that was just to try to understand what the potential for this property to be absorbed into the city of Bend's urban growth boundary in the future might be.
And that's an excellent point, Commissioner. So the water issues or concerns was something that came up in public comments, and the hearings officer in his decision kind of addressed it, because we do have a comprehensive plan policy about providing public services, addressed it there, and then also found that a lot of comments were kind of speculative at how the property would be developed in the future. So there wasn't necessarily an approval criteria that they were tied to.
Yeah. We run into that with every single one of these rezone applications is, it's a 2-part process, and we don't really get to consider the second part, the second phase in the initial consideration, which personally I think is problematic, but that's the way it works.
To your question about the priority for UGB expansion, and take this with a grain of salt. This is me reading statute on the fly. Is that, first priority, of course, is urban reserve land. Second priority is land adjacent to an urban growth boundary that's an acknowledged comprehensive plan as an exception or non-resource land. And I believe that this would qualify in that category regardless of the rezoning. So both surface mine and MUA 10 are exception or non-resource land, and it's neither farm nor forest. So it would continue to be a second priority land under the statute.
So this is just as much priority as rural RR10 or MUA 10 for incorporation to the urban.
Again, with a grain of salt, reading this on the fly, it appears that that's how the statute handles it.
Thank you.
We do have the letter as noted in the file from Avion Water that they could provide this property. So if they did stay in the county, what if the people that owned it now, would they be 10 acre? Would it go, what is the minimum size they could do with the 65?
So we have a 10-acre minimum size in this MUA 10 zone. That's the zone they're requesting. If they went under, I haven't calculated the maximum dwelling units, but if they came in under a cluster subdivision, they might be able to get some additional density. But if they came in under just a standard subdivision, we would see 6 perhaps residential lots in here.
And it does say the western lot is Brightonwood Estates, the 4th. So, and those are what, approximately a half an acre each. But
Correct. There's some
but those are within the UGB. So, yes. Does the UGB happen that fast? Expansion. I don't know.
Depends in part upon this legislative session.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I just want to say about the Avion letter. I acknowledge and recognize that Avion provided that letter. What I wanted to dig a little deeper into was whether Avion is providing that letter with the water rights in hand already to supply that property, or whether they would need an additional groundwater permit, because I have, there are a lot of concerns about the availability of new groundwater permits moving forward in the Deschutes Basin. And I'm tracking that, for any application for a development, there would be I'm sorry, what did you call it again?
So if a property owner, let's say this property owner came in under the new MUA zone, MUA 10 zoning, and wanted to subdivide, as part of that, they would submit essentially will serve letters. So as part of that subdivision approval, we look at everything from fire protection to electricity to water. And we want to make sure that we're creating lots when there's services available.
Isn't the fire like 1.4 miles or something? It's relatively close.
This one would benefit.
Yes.
Very close.
Yes. So,
event, yes.
All right. Are we ready? Any further questions? Are we ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion. So move approval of the hearings officer decisions for file 24723-547 PA and 24723-548 ZC, approving a comprehensive plan amendment and zone change.
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Thank you, commissioners. I'll be back here next Wednesday for our first reading.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And beyond the scope of moving this application forward, I do want to say that I think that I'm concerned that the way that our planning process is structured, we really can't do anything to ensure that this land will be kind of held and preserved in order to accommodate future urbanization. I just going through that whole process of discussion about the sufficiency of future water supply. I don't feel very good about the system that we have in place to ensure that there is water to supply this property in advance of these decisions that set the property up for future development. So we work with the system that we have, but under that system, I see no reasons to further scrutinize this application. But I don't think that the system that we have is very it is very smart in terms of either water, water planning or thinking about orderly development of a region.
Thank you, Commissioner. If needed, I can work with Will on maybe a follow-up email.
Yeah, thanks.
Great, thank you. So we are now at item number 10, the Hunnell Road.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Will Groves again, your planning manager. I'm filling in for Jacob today. This is a agenda item for consideration of second reading of ordinance 2024-001, changing the comprehensive plan designation and zoning map for 40 acres of land located at 64-430 Hunnell Road. On January 17th, the board conducted the first reading of this ordinance. No revisions were requested to the presented materials. So what is in the agenda packet today is essentially the same as it was 2 weeks ago. In fact, everything is identical except some exhibit labels which have been added, and no content has been changed. With that, I'm prepared to answer any questions the board may have. Otherwise, staff recommendation is to continue the suggested motion, which is included with the agenda request and in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Will.
I'm recusing myself on this item, but if it's going to go fairly quick, I'll just stay here.
But with that information, acknowledging that nothing's changed between first and second reading, I'll move approval of second reading of ordinance number 2024-001 by title only.
And I will second that. Commissioner DeBonne.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Move approval of by title only and ordinance amending Deschutes County Code Title 23, the Deschutes County Comprehensive Plan to change the comprehensive plan map designation for certain property from agriculture to rural residential exception area, and amending Deschutes County Code Title 18, the Deschutes County zoning map to change the zone designation for certain property from exclusive farm use to multiple use agriculture. Ordinance number 2024-001.
At this time, I'll move adoption of ordinance 2024-001.
And I will second the motion. Any discussion? Commissioner DeBonne.
Yes.
And chair votes yes. So passing the ordinance.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Will. Thanks for stepping in. Okay, item number 11. It says, is Kevin Moriarty on?
He must not be on yet, just given that we're about 45 minutes ahead of schedule.
Great.
Don't say that.
You just jinxed it.
We could be ahead of schedule, possibly ahead of schedule. Okay, Kevin, do you want me, should we send him a text or something?
We can go on to other items, the next agenda item.
Okay. All right. Let's go to item number 12 then. Those parties seem to be in the room.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Christy Bollinger, Deschutes County Property Management. Also have John here. I'll have him introduce himself.
Good morning, County Commissioners. John Roberts, Deputy City Manager, City of Redmond.
So we're here today. The city had reached out to the county to ask for an extension, 120-day extension on a 2019 land donation agreement. And in addition, the city is also asking for an adjustment in the number of or the percentage of affordable housing units related to that land donation agreement. So with that, I'll go ahead and pause and John can provide some further context and we'll also answer any questions you may have.
Right. And I think you're aware this is part of a state awarded pilot project. And the rules that accompany that pilot project are that projects are 30% affordable housing. When the city of Redmond submitted their application to the state, they had aspirations of 50% affordable housing. As we have continued to try to move this project forward, have made multiple attempts to enlist master developers. It's clear we need a little more flexibility with the amount of affordable housing to ensure us being more competitive with federal and state funding and simply the economic feasibility associated with the infrastructure. But I think what is most important to note is the aspirations of the project remain the same, which is that 75% of the project would be a combination of affordable and workforce housing, and only 25% would be market rate housing. So yeah, this is just an adjustment in the true affordable housing requirements to help us continue traction with getting an initial project established and going.
And one thing I'd just like to add, the city had reached out to DLCD just to get confirmation that it was acceptable to reduce the affordable housing units. So we did get confirmation by letter on that.
Thank you very much, Christy. Perfect timing. John, I have a question about this project. I thought it was like 485 units, perhaps. And I thought some of them apartment buildings?
Right. I think the goal is 450 units.
450.
And yeah, and it'd be a mix of housing, ranging from multifamily complexes to middle housing, to even single family cottages. So the goal is to create a complete neighborhood which has a mix of all housing types.
So that includes apartments then?
Yes, which include apartments, or what we refer to as multifamily housing. Yes,
Okay.
apartments.
All right, multifamily.
Well, I want to say I appreciate that continued commitment to affordable housing and you know, and that with this kind of restructure, we're still talking about meeting the requirements of the state under the legislation. And I also really appreciate the inclusion, you know, deliberate inclusion and thought towards addressing some of the missing middle housing needs in the community. So I'm supportive of this amendment.
Definitely the missing middle. We need more of that. So I'm glad you're still focusing on that part of the equation. I believe that Redmond's apartments are still, the vacancy is incredibly low.
Correct. Yeah, it's competitive and expensive.
And expensive, yes. And anyway, yes. Commissioner DeBonne?
Oh, yeah, just with the intention of making this project pencil, I do support this effort. You know, it's inflation and interest rates and everything is just taken off since we even started to talk about this project. So very supportive of, you know, aligning ourselves with the requirements of state law here to proceed. Yeah, so let's go swing some hammers. We're not there yet though, right?
How much longer before we can actually dig in the dirt and start this?
Right. So our most immediate goal is to apply to OHCS by March 4th for funding for the first project, which would be about let's say 25, 30 unit cottage duplex development. If we're successful in getting that project and getting awarded funding, we'd be moving this project forward early 2025.
Good. It always takes longer, doesn't it? All right. So you've got a March 1st deadline then for yourself. Is that a deadline they're saying, or is that just your personal deadline?
Yeah, it's OHCS has several funding cycles. Their first deadline is March 4th. Yes.
Okay. All right. So is that Andrea Bell?
I don't know. So I couldn't tell you.
It might be. Is there a motion then? Can we have one motion?
Yeah, one motion is.
One motion is fine. Okay. All right.
I'll move approval of document number 2024-104, authorizing amendment number 1 to the land donation agreement with the city of Redmond, and approval of board order number 2024-005, authorizing the Deschutes County property manager to execute the documents associated with closing the land donation.
And I will second it.
Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner DeBonne,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Thank you, John. I hope this helps.
Yeah.
Helps a lot.
Right.
Do you feel like there are master developers who are ready to step forward with this change or
Yes, we have two right now that we're working with. Yes.
okay. And then so they've specifically indicated that these were the kinds of changes that would be needed for them to step forward.
Yes, those were the exact changes they suggested. Yes.
Okay.
What kind of square footages are in the cottages?
They would hover between 900 and 1,400 square feet. And that's living space. That wouldn't include garage space.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, Kevin. Kevin, are you ready?
Sure.
Yes,
We just
we
take-
may be ahead of time.
We just take just a moment.
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, we're taking a 2-minute break?
2 minutes. Yes.
Okay, I guess we're taking a 2-minute break. David. Item number 11. Kevin?
Morning, Commissioners. For the record, Kevin Moriarty, County Forester.
I'm here today for approval and chair signature of the 2022 Title III certification form. Again, this is a certification form that we have for our Title III funds. We need to have this form signed every year and sent out to the Department of Agriculture for the funds we receive through the Secure Rural Schools and Community Self-Determination Act of 2000. One thing you should notice is that generally we ask for we obligate $120,000 per year through this fund. With myself and Corinne Heiner being new in our positions, we did not draw down the fund for the first 6 months in in the 2022, because we were not only in the position, but we also were not really utilizing the funds in that capacity. For the search and rescue efforts, they did draw down the full 60,000. So this year, the funds expended were 80,490.05 cents. So a little bit less than we generally ask for each year. And I guess right now I can open it up to questions.
Sorry, Kevin, can you say again what you would in a typical year we would be using of Title III funds for the first and the third categories?
Yeah, so again, because Corinne and myself were new to our positions, and then also there was not really anyone utilizing these funds prior to us starting our positions. So there was kind of a lag period where we weren't really utilizing them. Right. So you utilize them for any activities with Firewise communities and any activities working on fire or the community protection plans. So those are kind of the two main pieces, at least from my department, that we'd utilize the funds for. And then also is the search and rescue efforts.
Yeah. And so how much in prior years, before this unusual year where you and Corinne were both new, but in prior years, how much did, for Firewise communities work or community welfare protection plans work, how much have we been using in earlier years?
We've been requesting the full 60,000. So we request 120,000 or the draw of 120,000 each year, and then 60,000 for the natural resources department and 60,000 for search and rescue effort.
Okay.
So we didn't utilize then 40,000.
Yeah, but it should be still in the fund. We just didn't utilize it.
Okay. So we'll be able to use it next year or this 24?
Yeah, we can't exceed a certain amount, but that we will utilize the money we haven't used in previous years.
That is one really nice thing about these Title III funds, is that they you can hold them from year to year for a certain period of time, and use them across these three categories. So I'm glad, when I first saw this and we were spending, 60,000 on search and rescue and emergency functions, but only 20,000 on Firewise communities and community welfare protection plans, I was concerned. But now I'm tracking why that was unique to 2023, and we'll see more utilization by the Natural Resources Department of Title III funds in the future.
Yeah, we anticipate to use the full amount in future years.
So this was 23 that we missed it. So now that would be 24 then that we would be able to spend it.
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult to track because, we base this off the calendar year, and then as the county uses a fiscal year that ends in June and starts in July, and then the federal government also has a different fiscal year too. So we essentially just track it from July of, our fiscal year is what we track.
Mm-hmm. And there's some amount that's that is being carried over from even prior years before, right? There was a some amount of Title III from earlier years. So our job is just to make sure that we utilize these funds for these very important purposes that are high priority for us, before they expire after some number of years.
Yes, correct. So my other question about this is I've lost track with the secure rural schools reauthorizations. At this moment, how many years out are we sure we have secure rural schools? And when's the next time there's going to be a reauthorization scramble?
Commissioner Chang, I think you asked me this question last time and I didn't have a great answer for you. And I don't know if I have a great answer for you again. I believe that our funding sunsets in 2025, but I can get you an exact answer on that. And then I'm not sure as what happens after that. I haven't heard anything about it.
Yeah, I can check with Chris as well. I mean, roads gets Title II. Is it?
We're getting two now, aren't we?
Roads gets funds out of secure rural schools Title II, I believe. So I know that it's important for them to track it as well. The pot for roads is substantially larger, so it's really important for them to track this. So we can, I mean, if between you and roads, your department and roads, or someone at the sheriff's office, somebody could look that up and just let me know, that'd be helpful. Because in my opinion, Deschutes County should be lining up to advocate for reauthorization of secure rural schools when it expires, long before it expires the next time as well.
Yeah, Commissioner Chang, I can, when I submit this report, I can ask those questions too, to see if I can get answers, and then also work with roads department to try and get more information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Chair, Chris Doty, Road Department Director, and I are
Is he on?
coordinating. He just stated that SRS, Secure Rural Schools, has yet to be reauthorized for next fiscal years.
It has yet to be. Okay.
We're at the end. We're at the end of the current authorization.
That's a good question. It appears to be responding, and perhaps he's online to be able to answer the question, because you're right. They track this very, very closely. And he's certainly involved.
Isn't it the one
Looking back to see if he's on, but perhaps not.
Is
Okay.
Chris Doty on?
No. Okay.
That's okay. I mean, we'll find out, but I mean, flagging for the admin team that this is something that, we have substantial interests in reauthorization of secure rural schools. So I know that there's much broader policy discussions about, what the economic relationship between the national forest and the county that it sits within should be. But, until somebody comes up with a good solution, I'd like us to keep getting secure rural schools funded.
Exactly. And he did confirm we are at the end, but the efforts are underway to begin to pursue reauthorization. So we'll certainly keep that flagged going forward, given the importance of it to us. Thank you.
Isn't it like 800,000 times 2 or something?
I think it's a big
Or is
number.
it bigger than that?
Yeah, it's not $1 million a year, but it's a lot of money going to roads from secure rural
Okay,
schools.
so I'm sure Chris is going to stay on top of it besides that 50, 30, 20, right? That we all need to know about.
He's
We need from ODOT, in case ODOT is watching, we want to keep our 30% of the funds. So yes, don't take that away from us.
Chris is on top of all of the funding, doing a great job with that.
Thank you. Yes. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of chair signature of document number 2023-103, the 2023 Title III certification form.
And
Just to clarify, it's 2024-103.
I'm sorry.
document number, yeah.
Document number 2024-103.
Thank you, Kim.
I will second it.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Mr. DeBonne?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
And we are now with Lee Randall and Jen Patterson, item number 13.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, Jen Patterson, Strategic Initiatives Manager.
And Lee Randall, Facilities Director.
So we are here before you today to talk about the EECBG grant, which is the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant. It's a federal program put on by the DOE. We've come before you before, I think, to talk a little bit about this program, but there's a set amount of funds designated to certain local and state government entities. And specifically, Deschutes County has been designated a funding source of $78,310 to tap into with the EECBG grant if the commissioners so choose. There's two basically forks that you can choose on this program, either to go after a full federal government grant, which comes with the full government grant reporting process, or what they recommend for grants smaller than $200,000 is to go after a technical voucher. So we have done some research. We have spoken to several energy consultant firms, and we are recommending the if the board so chooses to move forward with the funds, to go after the technical grant voucher and to use those funds specifically for an energy and conservation strategy, which is an actual requirement of the grant. So if you accept the grant funds, you have to have an energy efficiency and conservation strategy, but you can use the grant funds to develop that strategy. In addition, with our conversations with our consultants, we don't believe that the full grant of $78,310 would be used towards just developing that strategy. So in addition, we would recommend conducting an energy audit, and we could take that information for future projects that are potentially in the works or that might be in the works over across departments. And then I'll turn it over to Lee to add any additional comments there.
Sure. In the past, we've participated in Energy Trust of Oregon's strategic energy management plan, which is very building specific. That was a 3-year program. And so this would allow us to work across departments and develop something that's broader. And then also do an energy audit, which again would probably be a more broad approach than what we've done in the past, and then potentially allow us to have that energy conservation plan and strategy in place as we as other grant opportunities may come up in the future.
Comments?
Cool. I have a couple questions. So as staff is envisioning this right now, this energy efficiency and conservation strategy and energy audit would only be looking at county operations and facilities, not broader than that, correct?
Correct. That's I'm trying to picture what might be broader than I guess looking across the county at other entities might be a broader approach. But I think this would be specific to Deschutes County operations. It would just be broader than what we've done in the past with Energy Trust of Oregon, which was specific to buildings. So I think this would look across multiple departments and operations.
Thank you. Yeah, and to kind of give a little context, I mean, there are people in our community who are hoping to develop, essentially a community energy plan for, they've done this for, within the city of Bend, and there's other people who are hoping to do something at county scale, not necessarily just focused on county facilities and operations, but. So that's helpful to understand. And Lee, if I was tracking what you just said, so Energy Trust has helped us look at specific buildings,
right?
But not at our facilities, kind of in an integrated way. And
correct. The STEM program is very specific to energy consumption at the facility level, and doing a deep dive into your energy billing, usage, and by time of day. And then technical studies of our equipment. And that was very helpful. And it's something that we'd like to continue to do, which probably could be incorporated as a piece of this plan. Right. But this would help us look more broadly.
And so kind of looking beyond facilities, would we be thinking about county operations as well? I mean, the massive amounts of energy that it takes to run our fleet and to run our to run our fleet, to run operations like solid waste, and the landfill, things like that.
Yeah, I think on one level, one of the skills and background and ability that a consultant would potentially bring is to help identify, what areas of county operations merit, a deeper look. And so at the outset, we don't necessarily, or we haven't necessarily kind of prescribed what that might look like. I think we're probably reliant to a certain degree on the consultant's experience once we were to award that project, if the board chose to go forward with this.
And I'll just add, in the beginning of our conversations, we brought Chris Doty into these conversations to talk about, charging stations, EVs, and part of our conversations too have been talking about solid waste. So I think there is a vision a little bit to see, based on the consultant's recommendations, what other departments would best fit into being part of this.
And one thing I might add, there is I believe, a federal Department of Energy template for this type of study. And so the study will follow that template pretty closely. It's somewhat, in that sense, it's somewhat prescribed in terms of what it'll look like.
That's why they're letting us do a streamlined application and report, right? So, okay. Makes sense.
So Lee, from your experience, is there any low-hanging fruit where, like, well, obviously if we could insulate more or change our controls or switch from electric to gas or gas to electric, I mean, are there any of those like big foundational things that just cost money to save energy?
Yeah, I can give a couple examples. One is, as we do re-roof projects, we typically follow the updated energy code. So for example, when this building was re-roofed, we went from an R19 roof insulation to an I believe it's R30 or 33 under current code. And there are ways to avoid doing that, but we feel like the benefit for the added cost is definitely there. And so that has occurred now on probably 4 or 5 of our buildings. And I think we haven't been able, that's fairly difficult to measure that impact. But just from anecdotally in our warehouse, for example, on really hot summer days, it seems a lot cooler in the warehouse given the additional insulation in the roof. And then the second one is with direct digital controls in our HVAC systems. So as we gain capability in mining the data that's available through those programs, we're able to do things like identify the best use of gas versus electric in buildings where we have dual fuel options. So for example, through that Energy Trust of Oregon study on this particular building, we adjusted the amount of gas we're using to heat versus electric. And that actually helped lower our bills because at the time, gas was cheaper to use and we weren't utilizing that as much as we could. And so that was just from a cost perspective, not necessarily from a CO2 discharge perspective, but from just cost, there were some cost savings in doing that. Another example is checking for and updating your CO2 sensors. So we all want fresh air, but if you're utilizing too much fresh air, you're paying more money to cool and heat that air. And so those are the kinds of things that those deep dives into controls help you identify.
Great, thank you.
So Lee, do you remember the roof on Courtney in maybe 19 or 20?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was the rating then of that roof? Did you do the 33 there also?
That building has a combination of insulation both under the roof and on top. My recollection is that we added rooftop insulation, which it didn't have previously. But I don't know that I have that number off the top of my head. That is about the time that the new energy code was adopted by the city of Bend. So I'm not sure where that fell in terms of the energy code. I'm pretty confident that we added some additional insulation, but I don't know if it was to the degree that we have on other buildings.
So you said in 4 or 5 of our buildings, you've done that?
Yeah. So Deschutes Services Building, the Redmond Services Building, which we just completed a re-roof there last month. The warehouse and the facilities and IT warehouse. Those are the ones that come immediately to mind. The Justice Building or courthouse that was re-roofed a couple of years ago, and that had was added with upgraded insulation. Sure, I'm missing one or two, but those are the ones that come immediately to mind.
Thank you.
We have been exploring pursuing a solar installation at the fairgrounds, both for the clean energy benefits that would provide, but also for the resiliency piece of that the ability to kind of have emergency operations in case the power goes out. That has also, and I know that we're going to try to start to have some discussions with the Redmond Airport and City of Redmond and North Unit Irrigation District about that microgrid project rooted in conduit hydropower that they're working on. Will those kind of resiliency and kind of energy, electricity reliability type considerations be part of this strategy, or would that continue to just be sort of a separate consideration?
I'll be honest, in reviewing the federal template, I don't recall whether there was a resiliency component or not, but we can double check that. I don't know if Jen, if you recall that part of the
but it would take me probably a little bit to get through that technical question on that one. So are you talking about the audit or in the planning?
Either. Yeah. And I mean, if it's not part of this strategy, it doesn't mean that we're not going to be doing it. I'm just curious whether that's kind of done in an integrated way or whether those are kind of two separate moving parts. And that's, you can tell me later.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it quickly and I'm not going to be able to detail through this. So I'll do a little bit more digging. But as Lee mentioned, they're blueprints that come with specifically the technical voucher, and they do provide the technical consultants. So based on, the consultants they provide and the blueprint they provide is how.
So we don't even have to do a contractor a procurement process.
No, so it's that's the advantage of going after the voucher versus going after the full grant for a variety of reasons. But no, they provide all that for us.
Have you seen the list of their?
I have not. We've talked to a couple of energy consultants just to say, hey, are you on the list? Do you know about the list? It seems to be like it's pretty thorough, but I haven't seen the list. And there is a clause in there that if there's a reason to incorporate a local, expert into that process, that you're allowed to do that, but not subcontract per se.
Okay.
So Lee, I have a different question. What about when we have smoke in the air and it gets into our building? What needs to be done differently in order to facilitate stopping of bringing in all that smoke to our building?
So the majority of our buildings, we now have capability to close the outside dampers in the event of a smoke event. And our team can take their laptop home. We'll have someone on call and we monitor the smoke over the weekend even, and we'll be able to change those outside dampers. What we see is that a lot of the smoke complaints that we do end up getting even after closing the outside dampers is often related to lobby areas. And so this building, for example, we have multiple outside doors. Every time that door opens, when we have, 350 to 500 AQI, that smoke gets drawn in even despite our best efforts. The one thing that we do though focus on is making sure we're not pulling that in as part of the HVAC system. Some of our better performing buildings, for example, the stabilization center,
has a double filtration system in which we're filtering that return air as well as the air that's coming in from the outside. And that's it's interesting because it's a fairly low tech system, but it's one of our best performing. We get the fewest complaints probably from the stabilization center of most of our buildings. The other thing is to raise the filtration level in our buildings, which even through COVID, we did that significantly across our buildings. The new North County campus, the 236 building in particular, has a system that's similar to the stabilization center, so it has double filtration. We also have a higher level, so we have MERV 13, which is really the entry level for healthcare level filtration. So those are some of the things that we've done. And then you'll notice when we do have a major smoke event, we now have a pretty good inventory of portable, what we call air scrubbers, but they're HEPA filters with usually like a MERV 19 or 20, which is extremely high filtration. So we'll distribute those to those lobby areas and central areas of buildings to try and capture and scrub some of that air that's coming in through people passing in and out of our buildings.
Thanks. Is there a motion?
I would move to authorize the submittal of an application for grant funds to complete an energy audit and develop an energy efficiency and conservation strategy.
And I will second it.
Is there any further discussion? Mr. Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner DeBonne,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now at other items.
We're way ahead of schedule, so
We're a
if you
little
came
ahead
here
of
for something
schedule,
that
so.
may be done.
If you were curious about the energy efficiency and conservation block grant funds,
We just passed it.
Actually, I was the rezoning of the surface mining.
oh,
Done.
It was, yes, it was like an hour ago, I think.
We're just way ahead.
You guys are. It's good to see you all.
It was at 10:15 then we started. I know.
there is a recording.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Appreciate
Have a great
all
day.
you do.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. We did have our visitors meeting yesterday that we left from the retreat.
Mm.
And it was Julia's last time being there. And we did, you noticed on their financials that it said, what, 300 from Deschutes County for that future fund, and that was incorrect on their statement. So apparently that's going to get corrected.
Right. So this is Visit Central Oregon, and we discussed the future fund and the allocation. And what we learned yesterday is that there is an allocation of total of $450,000 for the year. 300,000 is from the state of Oregon. That 350,000 will be allocated from the state of Oregon, and 100,000 from the Deschutes County TRT allocation to Visit Central Oregon. That's how that will be the breakdown for the future fund.
I'm glad we caught that yesterday because she's going to be gone and somehow, yeah.
Yeah, and the financial statement that was incorrect is it incorrectly designated 300,000 from Deschutes County, and it's actually 100,000 from Deschutes County. And they're making that correction.
And does that mean that only 100,000 will be available within Deschutes County for projects, or
450,000 will be available for the future fund grant opportunity.
Tri-county wide?
The Tri-County area, but most of them are in Deschutes County, but you're right. It is available for the Tri-County area, for the region.
And we did have a presentation of their draft financial statements. So yeah, that was good. And apparently there's 6 candidates, some excellent candidates for the new director, and you, Nick, are on that committee.
Correct.
So that was good. Is there anything else?
Eastern Oregon Counties Association meeting tomorrow at 10 o'clock. I remember last time they had a meeting, I was able to drive over there to Union County and attend in person. Tomorrow I'll be on Zoom. I think, Nick, are you going to be able to join us just to share the experience as a LCDC commissioner and the Eastern Oregon seats being recruited for. I think the application process just closed a couple days ago or something. I don't know what the date was.
I actually, I think it closes today.
Oh, today. Okay. So tomorrow will be after the fact.
If I understand correctly. And I can just, if it's helpful, the two topics that I'll provide a brief update on. One is the Farm and Forest Report. That is a multi-year program to look at making updates, revisions to the state's Farm and Forest Program, which will certainly extend beyond, well beyond my term on the commission. And then the other is the soon to be initiated rulemaking for Central and Eastern Oregon solar farms. And that'll be a very big project as well. So given that both of these projects, I think, will be of high interest to our Eastern Oregon County colleagues, I'll give them the update and then they'll know how to participate if folks choose to do so.
And then also Sharon Smith from the Oregon Transportation Commission, she'll be there. And that's kind of the same thing, give an update, make a relationship. And I think that's valuable. This is exactly the kind of opportunities for both of those commissions, in fact, to be able to just have relationships in the Eastern Oregon. So that's at 10 o'clock tomorrow.
And it says it's
So,
for a couple hours.
Yeah, it's a
3-hour meeting.
Yep.
And the interesting thing on the news this morning, it said that the truckers in Oregon were being overcharged. Do you hear that? It was on KVND. It's something I'm sure Chris Doty knows about it, but it was something like they were overcharged, perhaps maybe like $198 million or so. I mean, it was a huge number that the state is overcharging them. The trucking industry says they are paying more than their fair share. So they were running that on the radio this morning. Maybe Chris will let us know what the rest of the story is. But I'm not sure when I have a COAC meeting next.
Yeah, COIC board meeting tomorrow evening in Redmond also.
Okay.
I mentioned yesterday that the Wolf Livestock Depredation Compensation and Financial Assistance Committee met on Monday night, and I have every confidence that we will have a complete request to send to the state for both a depredation compensation and for preventative measures work coming out of Deschutes County on March 1st. And as part of that process, the request will come to the Board of Commissioners to approve. So look for that sometime in February.
Great. Anything else today, Kim? I don't know updates. Did you see that the murder, the 6 people down in out of San Bernardino? It said it was marijuana.
I saw that.
Yeah, I know. I thought you probably knew some of the players.
I used to represent that agency that was doing the investigation. So
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh. All right. Okay. Well then, no executive today. Okay. We actually, believe it or not, we ended up a few minutes early. So thank you all. And our next meeting will be next Wednesday morning at 9 a.m.